the theme of this two-part live series is the psychology of vanishing after a crash and when witnesses see someone and they still disappear. So, part one, why do people leave here? It's one of the strangest patterns in true crime history. A crash, an abandoned vehicle, and then the person simply vanishes. Abandoned vehicles cases fascinate people because it often doesn't make sense. It seems literally like an oxymoron. Like, why would you abandon the vehicle? Because the vehicle is what kept you safe. It's your vehicle. You know how it works. You know all its quirks, and you're in safety versus walking out into the elements, trying to maybe flag someone down to give you a ride, but can you actually trust that person? Then there's also the idea of fight or flight or freeze psychology. Essentially, certain people react in certain situations differently. Some people want to fight, meaning they want to engage with someone if they have to and potentially protect themselves. Others want to run away from the situation, and that could also be the reason that a lot of people disappear, or a lot of people freeze. And I tend to be in the latter category because I tend to be horrible at stress. So I would likely freeze and not know what to do, right? Also, the other thing that can compound that is the idea of head injuries and confusion. Because especially if there has been some sort of fender bender or vehicle accident, there's the idea that head injuries and confusion can definitely come along with it, which could explain why a lot of people do walk away, especially after a car accident. I know when I had a car accident, I was extremely confused. And then seeing my cousin get put down on a stretcher and be put in an ambulance, and then myself to very soon follow. It was a very traumatic incident for me, and I kept going back and checking to see whether or not I had a stop sign because I was afraid that it was my fault. And also too, you think about the idea of fear or panic or intoxication or warrants or mental health, right? So some of the cases that I've actually done on my podcast, if you want to learn more about, are Patricia Meehan. Patricia Meehan disappeared in, I believe, 1989, and there were actually witnesses to her case. She had been in a minor accident. She got out of the vehicle and, with witnesses present, actually walked away and has never been conclusively found since. And then we have, I believe the accident was in Montana. And then we have Maura Murray. If you know Maura Murray was in New England, and she had been a student at West Point, and she had an issue with credit card misuse, I believe, of another classmate or something along those lines. Her sister had been struggling with something. Her and her boyfriend were struggling, and she had packed up her room, and she was potentially looking at an honor code violation. But the previous week, she, I believe, had wrecked her dad's car. And then she ended up in this rural New England area. And she had also had an incident where there was potentially like a car crash. She went to get wine. She'd taken money out of her bank account. And so there was a rag in her tailpipe, which is really interesting. And she had told the bus driver who had offered to help her that she had called for help, I believe with AAA or something along those lines. However, there was no cell service, so there's no way that she could have done that. And then there was a very short period of time in which she disappeared, and there were no footprints or anything of that sort. And then you have Brandon Lawson, who disappeared in Texas, and he was concerned. Apparently, he was in the oil fields and such, and he was concerned about his safety because he said that a certain group were following him. And some people have asked about the cartels. Some people have asked about other scenarios. Some people just thought that he was paranoid. However, his body was found a few years later, and in the location, and it was identified as Brandon Lawson. And so families often reject simplistic explanations because they think that it has to be something more complicated. Not always. I mean, sometimes people walk away. Sometimes people, just have plans to do something but end up going another route. And then there's the emotional terror of incomplete stories because our brain does not like incomplete loops. So some of these people were seen alive after the crash, and then seemingly vanished into thin air. So let's talk about when witnesses see someone and they still disappear. One of the most haunting things in true crime is when multiple witnesses see someone after a crash and it still doesn't solve the mystery. So there have been Patricia Meehan sightings for years. They've never been confirmed nor denied, but there were a lot of people that have seen her. But then you deal with the issue of witness reliability. Did the witness actually see her, or did they see someone who would look like her? I tend to think that a lot of people look alike in various aspects. And honestly, too, memory can change under stress. You can think that you see a certain thing, but you don't because you're stressed. Environmental dangers after crashes. I mean, if you're not familiar with the terrain and it's dark or any number of things that could occur, you could very easily get hurt in a scenario in a location that you're not familiar with. And some disappearances become mythology, right? Because people are so hooked on them and they're wanting to figure them out. I mean, think of like the Zodiac Killer, for instance. Think of Ted Bundy. Think of all the people that you've heard that are, they become mythology almost. And then also there is the role of the media amplification, the 24-hour news cycle, the sound bites, the things like that don't tell the full story. The true crime 24 hours a day. I mean, people can watch it up to 24 hours a day or more, right? And so how ambiguity keeps cases alive for decades. And that's the issue. I mean, there's a lot of cases. For instance, one of the ones I follow is Jennifer Kesse. Actually lived in Orlando during the time of her disappearance, which was in 2006. And I still am hoping for a resolution for the Kesse family. And then also unresolved disappearances emotionally haunt communities because they still remember. They're still touched by them and things feel like they're never going to be the same again, which is really sad. So in closing, sometimes the scariest cases aren't the ones with too much evidence. They're the ones with just enough to keep everyone searching forever. Thank you for tuning in to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. My name is Buffy. I'm an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney. And I just want to say thank you for tuning in. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.